And I've told people out there that if they knew me when I was his age, that is in a lot of ways how I would have been.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I look at myself and I was out of the faith, but I was still pushing my beliefs. Do you know what I mean? At about 16.
Yeah, I wasn't faithful either at 16. I had actually left the church for a little while, and but I was still very much. I like to say that I was a Christian still, but I was a Christian that knew that I was going to go to hell, and I didn't really care at the time because there were women and music and drugs to use.
That was the advantage of being a JW, is there's no hell to worry about.
And that was one of the interesting. I tried to ask a couple times this morning when you had your, I guess it was last night for you, when you had your discussion with Fenrir. How many Jehovah's Witnesses do you think there are that are believers but don't adhere to the faith just because it's an annihilation and kind of thing at the end? You're just kind of burned up and just cease to exist, because that seems better to me than heaven.
So let me. How many would I say are not actual believers?
Well, no, that are believers that would believe in Jehovah and those things, but just aren't interested in the whole heaven thing, and are just like, well, I'm just going to live my life because I'll be annihilated anyway at the end.
That's hard to say, because I'm sure there's a lot, because it's sort of a human reaction. It's not a good one, but it is one.
Mm-hmm.
But I also feel that a lot of, if it is hard for me to say, because I've been out of the faith for so long, I have what I believe to be, or what I was taught to be, their beliefs. And then when I see the discussions from a lot of other former witnesses, there's a disconnect in what I thought was their beliefs and what they will say as their beliefs. So from my point of view, I would say no, because if you'd done your research, if you really look into their beliefs, you would see, that at least they used to have the belief in this second resurrection for all mankind. So you get that first punishment of the pain of death, but that's not the end. That's where most people stop talking about the their revelations, but that's not the end of the revelations. It continues. We all get resurrected. We all get to enjoy 1,000 years rule of peace and paradise under Jesus, with the 144,000 ruling over us in heaven. We all get that second test. And then we all get to go on to be tested again under Satan in perfection. So for people who would sort of lose their way, what it would more be is if they'd had that belief, they would stop caring, because they're like, well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I do in this test, I'll still get a second chance. That's what I always thought there'd be more of.
Strangely enough, there are a lot of people in the Pentecostal faith that think, oh, I'm just not going to worry about it right now. That they know that Jesus is going to return soon, and that they'll have the tribulation time period where they can make matters okay.
Yeah, they can make up for it, basically.
Yeah.
Because that's when God presents himself virtually, and then you go, oh shit, okay, God is real. I'm all for God, I'll be a good boy from here on out.
Mm-hmm. That's really the mindset of a lot of people, and I had that mindset for a while. It's a strange thing to have, but when I was a teenager, it was, well, if Jesus returns, I'll still have 7 years to make amends, and I'll be good.
Yeah, you got time. Yeah.
There'll be the giant bugs from the Revelation. They'll attack me and stuff like that, but I'll get through it.
You'll see it coming, and you'll be like, oh, okay. I am so sorry, Jesus. Forgive me now. I can see you're real.
Exactly. Well, and that's one of the things is, if that were to happen, there would at least be evidence. Like
well, exactly. And when and this is the thing that a lot of, I suppose, Christians or religious people wouldn't get, is that once we see evidence, that's allowing us to believe in something. If you see actual evidence, that's, I wouldn't jump to a conclusion that there's God, but if actual God came down and said, hey, I'm Jehovah, worship me and I'll give you eternal life, it's like, well, okay, God does exist. You know what I mean? But until then, we haven't got much to go off.
Yeah, when we're just going off of like Jesus and toast, and we're seeing people who say, well, God cured me of cancer, and then 2 weeks later they're dead.
They're gone.
It didn't really happen. Well, I mean, I would like to ask you now, who are some of your influences when it comes to being a YouTube atheist? Because all of us have people that we have watched before and really enjoyed their content. Absolutely.
I could go through a pretty big list, but I'll go through just the main ones in alphabetical order, because that's what the subscription page tells me. It goes from A to Z. So what have we got? Cosmic Skeptic was always there. I didn't get into like a lot of the older XJW sites, but I did get into what is his name? Heath. I got into John Cedars, obviously, eventually, and Telltale eventually. There's GMS, Godless Cranium, GE, of course. I did a lot of researching in Scientology over the last few years, and that's probably for the last 5 or so years, actually, because originally I wanted to do a YouTube channel going up against Scientology, and I'd even gotten to the point where I'd started talking to my family, talking to my friends about it, giving them warnings, because I know what Scientology is like. Like, I was going to be really getting serious into an expose. I'd looked into the local church and everything. Just before I decided to do it, though, they packed up. They all sold out and went to Sydney. So I was like, I'm not going to Sydney for that. But yeah, Scientology was a big one. But strangely enough, I never connected the similarities of the cult with Scientology and Jehovah's Witnesses until after, But that was another one.
And that's really strange, the similarities between the cult mindsets, because since coming out of the faith, I have found that there are We are back on the air.
Hello. Sorry about that.
Oh, I feel like such a moron. I can't believe I did that.
Oh, that's all right.
Hopefully we'll have some people join us in this chat now. I killed the other one. Oh.
Yeah, that'll all move over. Come on, people. Come back.
We've got 2. Yes, Mrs. Snarky and Beej are here. Okay.
I would be very worried if Mrs. Snarky didn't join.
I would as well. So basically what I was saying before was I found it really shocking when I left my fundamentalist beliefs and found the similarities between like the Pentecostal indoctrination and Jehovah's Witnesses, as well as Mormon indoctrination, that they all use basically a similar skill set. And it's really eye-opening once you actually get to know what's going on.
I'm just curious. I've got this book in my hand. It's the Theocratic Ministry School Guidebook. It's probably an old book now. I don't know. I don't think they'd still use it, but it was first published in 1971. This is a book that they use when you become a publisher, whether it's an unbaptized or baptized publisher. And a publisher means that you're going door to door trying to hit a certain quota of, your magazines and your Bible studies and stuff. So they have a certain quota to hit each month. And in this, it's basically a public speaking tutorial book. Like, it teaches you, it's not just public speaking, but that's one example. Like, it teaches you how to approach people, approach doors, how to deal with people and stuff like that. And I was wondering, is that something that they do? Like, is there any form of course that you go through, or a book that you read in as a Pentecostal preacher to do something similar? Well, obviously not for door to door, but to do the preaching.
I had several books that had tips and tricks for public speaking. I had a book that said it was how to reach the unchurched, how to church the unchurched.
Okay.
It was basically how to go door to door and get people to come to church. There were other manuals for, like I said, public speaking, how to get up there and get people to pay attention and actually listen to what you were saying. I don't know that I'm sure in the bigger churches where they were college taught and things like that, there's more to it. But with my being a country backwoods minister that was trained basically by my grandfather and another head minister, there wasn't really all that much to that.
Okay. Fair enough. I was just curious because it's something that they're very, it's all in the literature for JW. So every little thing like that is something that you'd read from a book for us.
Okay.
Well, used to be anyway. Used to be. Now to be all on the jw.org, I suppose.
And are there things that you've noticed? How long have you been away from the faith?
What am I now? I'm close to I don't know, probably over 15 years now. Easy. It has been a while.
Okay. And are there things that you've noticed that they've changed since you left?
I mean, the big one is the jw.org, because there wasn't, I mean, the internet existed, but not commercially, and not like we know it now anyway. And so the everything being moved from hard copy books to the literature online, that's a big change for many reasons. Like, not just because the practicality of it, it's great because you're not carrying around all these books constantly.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's very scary because of the ease in changing that information or deleting that information, or the amount of books that I go to look up and they're not there because they decided they're not going, like, even though they are Watchtower books, but just because they don't believe that that's current light, they're not publishing, like they're not letting anybody see it anymore. That's worrying, because that means we only have those hard copies, and want to prove in the next 50 years what their beliefs were. We've only got these hard copies. We have to keep these hard copies, because in 50 years, when it's all on your pads and whatever happens later, it's going to get harder to track each changing belief that they've had over the years. And that's really, really important for people like me who are coming out, because we get told about the change in beliefs, but we get indoctrinated in how to believe it went down and why it happened. And, it's all fantasized to be new light, spoken, inspired by God. When you actually find out the real details, you go, no, it wasn't. It was just this, particular guy became an apostate or something, and you guys had to change the rules because of him, and that was the new light. It's like, no, but none of that gets told. So without the actual hard copies, we really don't have any way to prove any of that. You know what I mean? And so that change is really worrying.
And I understand that, not having those hard copies, then you can't really point out, well, this is what they did teach and this is what they now teach.
Yeah.
It's tough in that perspective. I guess, we do have like the Wayback Machine, so maybe there's a way that would keep things up to date, but even it's not really all that great at times. one of the things that was asked in the question in the chat that I do want to ask you on, what is the knocking on the doors of strangers based on? Where does that come from in the Bible?
Well, the idea of being a Jehovah's Witness is that you walk in the path of Jesus. And so what Jesus would do, he would just on his daily routine, he would go around through the towns, through the, from place to place, just talking with people. And he would, just walk up to people, confront them and start discussing the Bible. Or to him, it would have been, God, the old scriptures, the Revelations, all that kind of garbage. But for the JWs, obviously, they want to try and walk in the same path. And so for practicality stance, they do it for door-to-door knocking. That's an organized way of doing it. So
well, that makes sense. It also brings up a humorous idea into my mind of people sitting down for dinner and going, "Oh, God damn it, it's Jesus again."
Yeah, he just wanders in.
Fuck.
That's pretty much it, though. And I've been the sort of person that's always said, look, why don't you be more like Jesus instead of making it an organized thing where you have quotas and stuff. Jesus didn't have quotas. Just in your daily activities, whenever you're at work and somebody brings up how beautiful something is, that's a chance you can mention God. You don't have to preach to him. You don't have to. That wasn't your intent. It's just, yeah, that's lovely, and I think God did that, something like that. You can slowly draw them in, but instead they go right up to your face, pissing people off.
Yeah, and I was going to ask, did you take part in a lot of door-to-door stuff?
Oh, yes.
And did you? Do you have any horror stories of door-to-door visits?
Funnily enough, the worst door-to-door visit was actually for a fundraiser I did that I was put on because I did door-to-door knocking with JWs. They knew that I'd be okay doing it. And I was a little kid, and I had chocolates, and I walked into this yard, and there was a big, vicious dog that rounded me up real quick, and I was out of there. Like this, I was tiny, so this dog was bigger than me, so I was shitting myself. And that kind of put me off door knocking without a adult or something. But as for actual JW door knocking, the worst, because you're always with an adult, and you're always presented as the if you're the kid, a lot of the times you're put in the place of trying to do the discussion. Okay, so you're the one that introduces yourself, you're the one that is trying to show the tract or whatever it might be. It would have been a tract at that age. And it's exceptionally intimidating because you don't know what you're talking about. Like, you've just been given this tract, which is just a piece of paper with a little bit of information. It's one of those simple slips that they used to give out. And like you've been given it, like, I don't know, the start of the day, and you quickly read through it. You try and figure out how you're going to pitch it, like how you're going to sell it, so to speak, in a different terminology. But you're a kid. You're a kid. This isn't what you do. So it's very foreign, and it's scary. And what the worst thing is because for me, I was in a small country town where everybody knew me. It was the fact that if I could just do this and walk away and never see them again, I wouldn't care. And there are a lot of people that were like that, like older people and stuff. But there are also a lot of people with kids that I have to go and see the next day. And so I'm here trying to sell my religion as a kid with these adults. I can't imagine what they are thinking, because I'm probably doing a horrible job at it. I'm not going to actually, they just take the tract because they're being nice. You know what I mean? They never come to the meetings or anything. It's just the worst feeling, and you have to go to the school next day, and you're like, okay, now I get to see all these kids that I just gave tracts to, and they're going to rip you apart. Like, there's no escape.
Well, that had to be a horrible experience. Before I get on to my next topic, I was going to share with you a story of my own. My uncle had a large bull mastiff that he had tied to a tree with a chain. And it was the sweetest dog, and for people, bull mastiffs don't really attack. What they'll do is they'll pounce on something and just sit there.
Yeah.
And this dog, the only thing that would set it off was if the doorbell was ringing. And one day after my uncle had gone to work, a Jehovah's Witness came up to the door and rang the doorbell, and this mastiff came around from the tree that it was sitting behind and just pounced on him and sat on him.
Oh no.
And my uncle came home several hours later, and his mastiff is still sitting on top of this poor Jehovah's Witness. He goes, that's probably the only time I can think of that a Jehovah's Witness has never even tried to talk to me about anything, because the second I got the dog off of him, that guy took off and he was just gone.
Oh Lordy. Was he young or old? Or?
He was probably in his mid-20s to 30s, I think is what my uncle said. And I'm pretty sure he had peed his pants and was just horrified. But yeah, the topic I was wanting to get into next after that story is one of the things when you grow up and you have a large Jehovah's Witness, group in your area, is seeing the kids be ostracized from like birthday parties and Christmas concerts and things like that, Christmas parties at schools. And I mean, what was your experience with that? Was that, I mean, that had to be hard as a kid to not be able to join in on the fun.